Her big rig kept breaking down, draining every dime she had left. Alone on the side of a dusty highway, with no clue why her truck kept failing, Rachel's world was collapsing. Then a stranger in a small-town diner revealed a secret so shocking it would change everything she thought she knew, and turn her fight for survival into a battle against betrayal and greed. Hit like and comment where you're watching from. Your support brings more amazing stories. Now let's begin. Rachel Carter's big rig shuddered violently before grinding to a halt just outside the faded neon glow of Milltown's only diner. The cold wind whipped dust across the cracked asphalt as she sat behind the wheel, jaw clenched, staring at the blinking dashboard lights like a prisoner staring at the bars of a cage. This was the fifth time in less than 3 weeks her truck had broken down, and each time, the repair bills swallowed more of her dwindling savings. The truck was supposed to be her lifeline, not a constant drain on her spirit and bank account. Rachel wiped the sweat from her brow despite the chill. She had promised herself she would not break, not after losing her husband in a crash 3 years ago, and not after the endless nights on the road where loneliness crept in like a slow poison. This rig was her future, or what was left of it. The flickering sign of Due's Diner beckoned her, a dim beacon in the growing dusk. Rachel shut off the engine and climbed down, boots hitting the gravel with a weary thud. Inside, the warmth hit her like a wave. The scent of strong coffee and fried eggs wrapped around her like a blanket she didn't realize she needed. Maggie Doyle, the diner's waitress, glanced up from her counter duties and offered a tired but genuine smile. "Long day, Rachel." Rachel forced a nod and sank into a booth by the window. She stared out at her big rig, parked under a rusted street lamp, its shadow long and crooked like her hopes. Moments later, the door swung open again, letting in a gust of cold air and a man who looked like he belonged nowhere but was willing to try. Jack Monroe, a Michelin star chef who had walked away from the high-stakes world of fine dining in Boston, paused in the doorway. His once crisp chef's jacket was crumpled beneath a battered leather coat, and his eyes held a flicker of something lost, a man searching for a second chance. Jack ordered a black coffee and took a seat at the counter, his gaze subtly drawn to Rachel. Something in her defeat, her quiet determination, struck a chord deep within him. As Rachel's phone buzzed in her pocket, she hesitated before checking the screen. Another repair invoice, this one more expensive than the last. Her heart sank. Unseen by her, Jack's thoughtful eyes narrowed. He sensed that this wasn't just bad luck. Something was very wrong with Rachel's truck, and the story behind it was about to unravel. The sun was climbing slowly over Milltown, casting a pale light through the windows of Due's Diner. Rachel sat in her usual booth, nursing a second cup of black coffee. Her eyes kept drifting to her phone, which had buzzed yet again. Another text from the local repair shop, this time an estimate that made her stomach churn. The big rig she depended on was bleeding her dry, and there was no end in sight. Maggie, the diner's waitress, came over with a plate of eggs and bacon. She set it down gently and leaned in, lowering her voice. "Rachel, I know you love that truck, but sometimes you have to ask if it's worth it. You don't have to go through this alone." Rachel's jaw tightened. "It's not just a truck. It's my future. The last thing I have left of my husband's dream." Her voice cracked for a moment, but she caught herself quickly. "I'll fix it. Somehow." Across the room, Jack Monroe watched quietly from the counter, stirring his coffee. His life had spiraled from Michelin star kitchens in Boston to this tiny diner in the middle of nowhere. He saw something in Rachel's determination, a fierce resilience that resonated with his own broken hopes. Later that afternoon, Rachel was under the hood of her big rig, the midday sun baking her back as she examined the engine. Jack approached hesitantly, wiping grease-stained hands on his jacket. "Need a hand?" he offered. Rachel looked up, surprised but not opposed. "If you think you can help." Jack wasn't a mechanic, but his chef's mind was sharp. He noticed the small details: wires tucked too neatly, bolts that seemed freshly twisted, parts that didn't quite match the rest. "This doesn't look like normal wear and tear," Jack muttered. "Someone's been messing with your truck." Rachel stared at him, disbelief flooding her face. Sabotage? The idea seemed too wild to believe. That evening, inside the warm glow of the diner, the three of them, Rachel, Jack, and Maggie gathered over cups of coffee. Maggie spoke softly of whispered rumors about the local mechanic, a man with a shady reputation and a penchant for quick fixes that only cost the truckers more in the long run. Determined, Rachel felt a flicker of hope for the first time in weeks. With Jack and Maggie by her side, maybe she could fight back. Outside, the night deepened. The small town's peaceful facade masked secrets waiting to be unearthed, and Rachel's battle was only beginning. The next morning, Rachel felt a mix of dread and determination as she stepped into Dew's diner. The chilly breeze carried whispers of the town's quiet gossip, but inside, the warmth of the diner offered a fragile sense of safety. Jack was already there, flipping pancakes behind the counter, his hands moving deftly despite his tired eyes. "Morning," he said without looking up, then added with a half smile, "I did some digging last night." Rachel's curiosity piqued. "What did you find?" Jack wiped his hands and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his jacket. "There's a mechanic around here named Tom Harlan. Seems like a nice guy on the surface, but the records don't add up. Truckers whisper about him charging for repairs that don't last, and there's talk of cheap parts." Rachel's stomach tightened. She had suspected this, but hearing it confirmed hit hard. Maggie joined them, carrying fresh coffee and a look of concern. "I overheard some customers talking. Tom's got connections, local suppliers who push these faulty parts, and it keeps truckers coming back, broke and desperate." Rachel clenched her fists. "He's been sabotaging my truck to make me pay more. I can't believe someone in this town would do that." Jack nodded. "It's ugly, but it's real. We need proof." Together, they hatched a plan. Jack, who had learned to observe details as a chef, volunteered to document the truck's condition after every visit to the mechanic. Maggie offered to keep an ear to the ground, listening for any suspicious chatter. Rachel prepared herself to be more vigilant, taking notes of every strange noise and unexplained failure. Days turned into a week. The trio's quiet investigation slowly gathered pieces of a puzzle. Rachel's truck, despite repairs, continued to falter at the worst moments, on lonely highways in freezing rain. Jack's photos revealed mismatched parts and haphazard fixes. Maggie's gossip turned into names and dates. One evening, as they reviewed the evidence under the diner's flickering lights, Rachel's phone rang. The caller ID was blocked. "Hello," she answered cautiously. A distorted voice whispered, "Stop digging, Rachel. You don't want to know the truth." Her heart pounded. The stakes had just gotten higher. Rachel looked at Jack and Maggie. The fight was far from over, and now it was personal. The phone call left a cold shadow hanging over Rachel's thoughts. Whoever was behind the sabotage did not want her to uncover the truth, but she refused to back down. Instead, it fueled a fierce determination to protect her livelihood and expose the corruption. That night, Rachel stayed late at the diner with Jack and Maggie. They spread out their growing collection of evidence, photos, notes, and voice recordings. Every piece told a story of deception and greed, carefully masked by the mechanic and his supplier. "Look here," Jack pointed to a photo showing a rusty, ill-fitting brake line. "This part shouldn't even be installed in a truck this new." Maggie frowned. "If it fails on the road, Rachel could be seriously hurt." Rachel's jaw tightened. "It's not just about me. This mechanic has been ruining other truckers' lives too." The trio decided to take their findings to Sheriff Collins, a man reputed to be fair, though cautious when it came to small-town scandals. The sheriff listened carefully, flipping through their evidence. He leaned back, rubbing his chin. "If what you say is true, this could go deeper than just sabotage. But you'll need proof beyond suspicion. I can help set up surveillance at the mechanic's shop. You three stay safe." Days later, hidden cameras were installed, and Rachel found herself watching footage that made her blood boil. There were clear moments where the mechanic deliberately loosened bolts, swapped genuine parts with cheap knockoffs, and talked on the phone about keeping the cycle going. One afternoon, while reviewing the footage, Rachel's phone buzzed again. This time it was a text message. "Stop now, or there will be consequences." Fear mixed with anger, but Rachel's spirit stayed unbroken. She called Jack and Maggie immediately. "They're trying to scare me, but we're closer than ever." The diner felt different now. Not just a place for food, but a battlefield where courage, friendship, and justice intertwine. Jack began experimenting with a new menu inspired by local ingredients, quietly bringing hope to the struggling community. Maggie's unwavering support kept Rachel grounded. Then came the day when the sheriff, with a team, raided the mechanic's shop. The whole town held its breath. Rachel watched from the diner window, heart pounding, as evidence was seized. The mechanic's scheme was unraveling. A victory not just for her, but for everyone cheated by greed. The mechanic's arrest rippled through the town like a thunderclap. For years, his quiet sabotage had drained the community's hard-earned money and trust. Now the truth was out, and justice was finally catching up. Rachel stood outside the diner, breathing in the crisp morning air, feeling the weight of weeks of fear and struggle begin to lift. Jack joined her, a hopeful smile replacing his usual weariness. "Looks like you're free to hit the road without worry," he said, nudging her gently. Rachel smiled back, but her mind was already racing ahead. The ordeal had changed her, not just as a trucker, but as someone who had discovered strength in unexpected allies. As word spread, a surprising offer came. The very businessman behind the faulty parts supply reached out to Rachel. Instead of threats, he proposed a chance to consult on honest trucking practices, an opportunity to help rebuild what had been broken. Daniel, the chef who had once fled the pressures of Boston, had transformed too. Inspired by the community's resilience, he took over the diner, crafting simple yet delicious meals that brought neighbors together. Maggie stayed on, her warm presence anchoring the diner as its heart. Rachel found a new rhythm, balancing her renewed trucking career with the unexpected role of advocate and mentor. The little town, once weighed down by deceit, now buzzed with hope and shared purpose. One evening, as the sun set behind rolling hills, Rachel stood by her big rig, polished and ready. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time in years, it felt like a journey full of promise. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind, knowing this chapter was just the beginning. The diner's neon sign flickered on, glowing softly in the twilight, a beacon for all who believed that even in small towns, courage and kindness could rewrite the story.